Morning. Today's Bible reading is Leviticus 16, verses 7 to 10 and 29 to 30. Then he must take the two goats and bring them to me at the entrance to the tent of meetings. He must cast lots for the two goats. One lot is for me, the other is for the goats that carries the people's sin away. Aaron must bring the goat chosen by me by lot. He must sacrifice it for a sin offering. But the goat chosen by the other lot must remain alive. First, it must bring in to me to pay for the people's sin. Then it must be sent into the desert as the goat that carried the people's sins away. Here is a law for you that will last for all time to come. On the 10th day of the 7th month, you must not eat anything. You must not do any work. It does not matter whether you are Israelites or outsider. On that day, your sin will be paid for. You will be made pure and clean. You will be clean from all your sin in my sight.
Forgot to take. Welcome. Today, it's pretty exciting. I know everyone here, I actually had like 5 different people come up to tell me how excited they were to hear me talk. And I can't believe it. Everyone is so excited for Leviticus. Woo, 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 woo. So, since we've all got the vibes for Leviticus, I thought maybe we could, because it's not normally, I tell you what, when I normally talk about Leviticus, it's not normally something people are like, oh, keen to hear you. So I'm keen to hear from everybody. What do we know about Leviticus? Because it can be, normally, not such a mature congregation like you, but normally it can be a bit of a tricky book. Potentially, well, at least I certainly have found it that way in the past. So I'm wondering, could we do a vibe check on Leviticus? So what do we think? We hear the word Leviticus. I see a yawn in the back. Great, perfect. So we get yawns. And we're also, as I tell the children, we're not judging my spelling because I'm dyslexic, okay? So, Y-A-W-N. Okay, we're fine. We know what it says because I've told you what it says. Right, so we're yawning, tired. What else do we think when we think about Leviticus? Rules. So many rules. Ugh, rules. Yeah. What else? Weird, yes, and Cyrus? Weird, yeah, weird. I'll put weird twice. It's super weird. And it's weird again. Anything else we want to say about Leviticus? Priests. Yeah, people in funny hats and clothes. I don't know if that's, I imagine the Pope hat. So that's fine. So yes, we got priests, we got funny hats going on, lots of special outfits. Anything else? Yeah? Instructions for people. Oh. Gods. I just put it in brackets because we know, yeah, okay, we do that first. So vibe, sorry, I forgot to write vibe check. My bad. Vibe check. All right, Mary was going to say something. Repetitive, yeah. Hence the yawning earlier, yeah. Yeah, sacrifices all over the shop. All right, that's a pretty good list. It's a pretty good vibe check. Yeah, so I was surprised when people were excited to hear me talk about it because this is normally the things that we get. It's maybe not as engaging as when we get to sort of like the New Testament and what's going on there. So I think part of the problem is Leviticus is so far removed from us today. It's really hard to imagine what it's like in the ancient Near East, which is what they call the time period. So I was born in the 80s. They're born in the ancient Near East. It's not quite the same, but a long time ago. It's hard to imagine how this sort of book of rules that are weird and full of priests with instructions by God for his people, that just feels repetitive and there's all these sacrifices. When Jesus in the New Testament, he calls it good news. He's like, the law is good and it's great and he came to fulfill the law. So how do we get there from this? It's really hard. And so to help us sort of like get in the mindset of what it sort of meant for this incredible ceremony we're going to talk about, this ritual called the Day of Atonement, the Tale of Two Goats, we're going to watch a video by the Bible Project on the book of Leviticus to sort of help us situate ourselves, understand what's going on, and get a bit of a context. And then what I want us to do is I want us to do a vibe check post-video, all right? So there's going to be more participation in case you thought that was the end. Vibe check. Oh, gosh. Yeah, okay. A vibe check after. So, does this stuff change? Is it intensified as you're reading? Do you have new questions? More weird vibes? What is your vibe check after watching the video? And let's have a look at it. All right, so let's play that video.
The book of Leviticus, we know you've been avoiding it because it's weird. So let's fix that. Now remember, the story of the Bible began with humans in God's presence, but they were banished because of their rebellion. However, God wants to be in relationship with us, so he chooses one family that he will use to restore the world back into his presence.
And so God's presence comes to dwell in a tent right in the middle of Israel.
And that's great.
But it creates a problem because it's so intense that Moses can't go in, and other priests who enter inappropriately, they die.
Well, wait, if God's presence is good, how is it all of a sudden dangerous for people?
So think of it this way. God's presence is like the sun. It's pure power and goodness. And when something mortal and corruptible gets close to such pure power, it's destroyed. And so the word holiness is used in Leviticus to describe God's pure and powerful presence, which, like the sun, is both good and dangerous. So the point of Leviticus is to show how corrupt Israelites can live near God's goodness without being destroyed. Now, in the book, there are three ways for how this is all going to work out, and these are going to seem strange to you, but just hang in there with us.
The first one is rituals, the second is this idea of priesthood, and the third is a bunch of purity laws.
Now, the book is broken up into 7 sections, and each solution is explored in 2 sections of the book. The rituals are here, the priests are here, and the purity laws go here.
Now, the first solution, rituals, involves a lot of animal sacrifices. And so Leviticus begins with detailed instructions for how to make these sacrifices. Some are ways of saying thank you to God, and others are simply ways of saying I'm sorry.
And here at the end of the book, there are some more rituals. And these are about observing sacred days and festivals. They're all celebrations that retell some part of the story of how God rescued Israel and set them apart from the nations.
The second solution to the holiness problem has to do with priests. You see, being directly in God's presence is really dangerous. So he appoints priests as special representatives who can go into his presence on behalf of others.
So in this section, we have a story about how the priests are ordained into the priesthood. And then this other section explains the set of higher standards that the priests have to live by because they work so closely to God's presence.
The third solution in the book is all about purity laws. And this is by far the hardest thing to understand. For example, in this section, we're really concerned with knowing whether you're clean or unclean.
Or another way of saying that is being pure and impure. Here's what we need to know to understand this. When you're in a pure state, you can be near God's presence. When you're in an impure state, you can't. And so it was really important for Israelites to know what state they're in at any given moment.
So the first thing thing we have is a list of pure and impure animals.
Yeah, this list of animals is divided up by where they live. So on the land, in the sea, in the air. And the text is just not clear about why certain animals are impure or why touching or eating them makes you impure. What is clear, however, is that avoiding these creatures will set Israel apart, and it will remind them that God's own holiness should affect every part of their lives, including what they eat.
After the food laws, we get a lot of random rules about things like skin disease, touching dead bodies, what to do with bodily fluids.
But they're not random. All of these are things that the Israelites associated with life and death, which are sacred things because God is the author of life.
Okay, but simply coming into contact with these things makes you impure?
They do, but we have to keep in mind that it's not wrong or sinful to be ritually impure. You just wait a few days, take a bath, offer sacrifice, and you're pure again. What is inappropriate is entering into God's presence when you're in an impure state.
Now, there's more purity laws over here in this section.
Yeah, these focus on Israel's moral behavior. So these are laws about social justice, healthy relationships, having sexual integrity. Living by these laws will make Israel into a morally pure people who can live near God's presence.
Those are the three solutions. Now, you probably noticed that they surround the very center of this book. And it's here that we find a really important ritual called the Day of Atonement.
Yeah, so Israel's a big tribe now, and odds are there's a lot of sin happening that goes unnoticed that people are not dealing with. And so one time a year, the priests would take 2 goats. And one of those goats is killed, and its blood is carried right into God's presence where it symbolically covers or atones for Israel's sin.
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
Well, the meaning of the sacrifice is explained in the next chapter, where God says that the blood of a creature is its life. And so this goat's life is offered as a substitute. It's receiving God's punishment for Israel's sin so that the people don't have to.
That leaves the second goat.
Yeah, the priest puts his hands on it, and then he confesses all of the sins of Israel. It's like he's placing the sins on the goat. And then that goat gets cast out forever into the wilderness. It's called the scapegoat.
Yeah, I've heard that word before.
Yeah, it's a very powerful image of how God is graciously removing Israel's sin.
But let's be honest, sacrifices in general seem so barbaric.
We have to remember that in the ancient world, sacrifices were the main way of buying favor from the gods. But the problem was that those same gods are unpredictable, they're fickle, you never know if they're going to ignore you or they're going to turn on you. And so it's in this cultural setting that we see Israel's God as totally different. He does get angry about human corruption, but it is never arbitrary. And he loves people. So he provides this clear way for Israel to know with confidence that they are forgiven and that despite their corruption, they are safe to live near his presence. And so that makes the book of Leviticus actually a revolutionary statement in its day.
So that's Leviticus. But Israel's still at Mount Sinai in the middle of the wilderness. They need a place to live.
Yes, the land God promised to Abraham. And so the journey to that land is what the next book of the Bible is all about.
The book of Leviticus. We know you've been avoiding it because it's...
So, what's the vibe check now on Leviticus? We've just watched something that maybe gives us a little bit of context. Yeah? What are our thoughts? Weird with a purpose, like it. So it's still weird. Yeah. Weird with a purpose. Yeah, awesome. What else? Yeah. Yeah, it's structured. Yeah. It's divided into 7 sections. What else? Yeah. Intense. Yeah, it is intense. Yeah, there's a lot of cultural context we need to understand what their community was like so that we can understand what these meant to the people at the time. Anything else? Lots of dead things, yeah. True. Yeah, Still confusing, yeah. But important. Confusing, but important. So they're different, but they're sort of connected. Yeah. Ooh, foreshadowing. Yeah. One last one. Does anyone want to go?
I think like it shows us how God loves us.
Yeah.
Because he wants to make it clear how we can get close to him.
Yeah, and I think that's really kind of the core of it, Mary. Great one to finish on. It is weird and it's hard for us to understand. It's super intense. It is a bit confusing. But when we understand it in the cultural context to the people that it was written to, because it wasn't written to us, so Leviticus would probably look real different if it was written to us in our time. But it wasn't. It was written to ancient Israel in their time. And it was a book that shows them how God loves them and how to love God. Has anyone ever had a friend who's like hot and cold? And my best friend in high school got upset with me one day. I can't even remember why. And we were sitting and he had a can of Coke. He literally poured it on my legs just because he wanted to be mean. And then like later on was like, why are you upset? Right? This is my best friend in the whole world. And he just did stuff all the time that was like, what are you why am I here? This is not a good friendship. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, sometimes it's great. Sometimes he's like being super weirdo, burned holes in my car, like lots of things. I learned lessons about friendship, guys. That's probably good Leviticus. But it was fickle. I didn't know like what version of him was going to show up on which day. And that's how people in the ancient Near East felt about their God. They didn't know. I'm doing this thing. Will you like it? Will you not? Will you help me here? Won't you? How do I get your favor? How do I get to know you? Like that friend who just keeps switching sides. You're friends, then you're not. Then you're friends, then you're not. But this is a book that removes all of that ambiguity, all of that confusion and that mystery. God says, I don't want you to be confused about how to love me or knowing about how I'm going to love you. Actually, here's a set of rules that's going to make it really simple. Day in, day out, this is how I'm going to work. You do this, I'm always going to do this. You do this, I'm always going to do this. You don't have to guess with me. But more than that, we have to remember this is a people who couldn't read and did not have access to books. So when we think about the hugeness of who God is and what he's like, the book of Leviticus with all these rules, which are really confusing and maybe they're for a purpose but we're not sure, it meant that in every single aspect of life, God was teaching them something that they could learn about him. Don't mix these two cottons together because I'm pure and holy. Don't eat these foods because I want people to look at you and see that you're different. Whether they're eating, what they're wearing, how they're doing life, every single part of their day, they're being reminded of something about God and who he is and what he's like. So they seem maybe weird and arbitrary to us, like, what does it matter? But for people who couldn't read, who didn't have access to the Bible, who lived out their theology every day, God provided them with moments at every single minute to reflect on him, to understand something new about him, and to teach it to your kids. There's that passage in Deuteronomy, which is like, write my words on your doorposts, on your lintels, on your foreheads, keep it with you always. This was God saying, I'm going to help you do that because there's so much of me to know. I'm going to help you do it little bit by little bit by little bit. It's really helpful. So then we get to this Day of Atonement, and I think it's in the center because it's so important, right? Because God goes, you know what, I've given you these rules about how to love me, and I've shown you I'm always going to be the same. And I've helped you live it out every second of the day. I've given you different ways to connect with me and to remember me and to think about me. But I know, do you know what? There's going to be times when you disobey your parents and you forget to offer the sin sacrifice because it's just something that happens. Or you're going to take my name in vain and you're going to forget about it. You're going to get something from the market and they're going to pay you too much and then you forget and you're not going to make restitution properly. So there's going to be all these things that are missed, right? All these little bits of life that are just missed and you're going to forget and you're not going to remember, that are going to go unforgiven because we haven't done the ritual to God and say, oh, I'm really sorry, here we go. So God says, I know that that's going to happen. So what I'm going to do is every year, I'm going to create a ritual, a space that says, look, all the stuff you've missed, every single thing, even the things that you don't even realize they're hurtful because maybe the person didn't tell you or you didn't realize the impacts that was going to have. So in our community, it might be like I bought this jacket from a fast fashion label and I don't really fully understand or comprehend how that's impacting people overseas who are making it and the environmental impacts. Like, I can't fathom that. I cannot fathom the debt. So even if I sat down and I thought, God, I'm sorry that I made that choice, like, I'm going to miss stuff. It's impossible. I'm not going to be able to catch everything. So God says, I want to be with you so badly. I want to love you and I want to live in your midst so badly. I'm going to make sure that I cover everything once a year because I don't want anything to be in between us. So he gives them this ritual and he says, when I forgive you, I need you to know that it's not just that the consequence of your sin is taken care of. I'm eradicating it. We've got a shredder here. I'm absolutely destroying it. I'm dismantling it. I'm taking it. You don't need to deal with the consequence of sin anymore. Actually, the separation from me, which is the consequence of sin and eternal death, you don't need to deal with that. I'm going to deal with that for you through the goat. And then he says, but not only that, it's not just the consequence, it's how you feel about yourself, how you feel like it defines you. I don't know about you, but I've certainly made some mistakes in my life where they just hang around and they weigh on me and they make me think that I'm not a child of God anymore, that I'm not his salt and light, that I'm not beloved by him. And that's just not true. So God doesn't only say, I'm going to take the consequence, but then he gets another goat. We're all seeing this as a goat, not a sheep, goat. So he gets another goat and he says, I'm going to remind you that I remove this actually from you as well. I take the sin away. It's not just that I deal with the consequence so that you don't have to be separate anymore, but who you are, your identity is in me. It's not in the sin in this anymore. And that's incredible. The only problem is he had to do it every year, right? The high priest had to do this every year. It wasn't a permanent solution. And that's what we see with foreshadowing in the Old Testament, right, is that we're leading up to the time when God's going to give the ultimate solution, the once for all, where we don't have to keep coming back and doing this again and again and again because God's going to deal with it once forever. And that's what we have in Jesus, right? Jesus is the one who on the cross took the consequence of our sin. He took the consequence of the cross. He died. He experienced that separation. And he did that for us so that we never have to if we want to. But more than that, he invites us into a new way of being because our new law is written on our heart. We're healed in our hearts. We have the ability to be one with God, the Holy Spirit living in us close, to be called children of God, a part of his family, heirs with Christ, dearly beloved, masterpieces. The things that are over there in the shredder, they don't define us or who we are or what happens. And Jesus did that once for all because he was fully God and he was fully human. So he was better than a goat because he was the exact what we are. He is a perfect sacrifice. And he was also perfect because he didn't sin. There's no blemish on him. He never made the mistakes that I make again and again and again, time after time after time. The hard thing is that we can sometimes forget this even as Christians, which is why we celebrate communion, right? That's part of what we do at communion is we eat the bread and the wine and we remind ourselves of what Jesus did for us on the cross. But today, rather than doing communion together, I thought it would be a good idea to maybe reenact a little bit of this ceremony, because I think the two symbols are really helpful and important for us to get and embed in us. And sometimes doing something physical can help us activate, think about things in a way that just sort of sitting can't. At least for me with ADHD. Sometimes I need to move around. Hence the walking today. So I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to, for yourselves, reenact and remember that Jesus is the once and for all sacrifice. That he has fully and utterly dealt with the consequence of our sin. We don't need to fear or worry about coming to God, but also that we're not defined by any of this stuff. Not only do we not deal with the consequences, but we are called by a different name, a different relationship now in God. So we're going to play a song, Come to the Altar, and during that song, it runs for about 5 minutes, you have the opportunity to do one, both, or none of the things I'm about to suggest. But you are all given a go as you came in. And if there's something that you are hanging on to, that you feel the weight of sin, there's a mistake that you've made or some consequences, and you just know you need to give that to God, my encouragement for you is to write on this, draw a picture, a symbol. No one else has to see this but you. On it that represents those things that are weighing you down, that are making you feeling like you can't come into the presence of God, that are holding you back. And I'm going to invite you during the song to come up and shred your goat. And it's going to be loud, and that's okay, because I don't know about you, but being in the sacrifice of atonement would have been loud and messy and weird, and all of these things would have smelt weird. So we can deal with a little bit of noise because God can too. So it's going to be a little bit loud, and that's okay. So I encourage you to do that if there's something weighing you down. But if, or as well as, maybe you're really struggling to remember who you are in God. Maybe you made a mistake, you did something, and you're just like, God, I am just a pile of trash fire right now. I'm just awful. I'm not who you're calling me to be. This is an invitation to tie a piece of ribbon to this beautiful little goat, our scapegoat, and to leave it there. To remember that actually as we walk away from this, we are called beloved and children and adopted and heirs and salt and light. This is our identity because of Jesus, because of what he's done, not these other things. And then after the song, I'm going to walk our scapegoat out of the sanctuary as Mary comes up to deliver our final song together. So we're going to listen to that song, Oh Come to the Altar. If you want to do neither of these things and you just want to sit, absolutely. This time is for you to sit and reflect. But these two things are here for you if you would like to come and remind yourself of who God calls you to be, and to come and relieve the burden and the shame and the guilt that we have for our mistakes because Jesus has paid the consequence in the shredder. So we'll have that song now. Thank you.